Leadership and Yoga fam. Today I have Rey Cardenas back on the podcast. So this will be the second interview that I have with him. Be sure to also check out the first episode that we recorded in studio last year when I was in Austin, Texas. And Rey is one of my favorite yoga teachers to practice with in Austin. He is the co-owner of an absurdly high quality donation-based yoga studio called Practice Yoga Austin. And today's podcast, if you were listening, it's going to spark your interest in a variety of different subjects. Everything from astrology and the different kinds of astrology, by the way, seasons and what they have to do with our practice, rhythm. It will take you through Ayurveda, yoga therapy, and even a meditation near the end of the podcast on how you can cue your classes in a new way. So definitely don't miss that. It's very unique and very interesting. And this episode truly feels very aligned with what I've been learning actually with my friend Art, who is the creator of Tend. And what I've been doing with my friend Art is personalized Ayurvedic consultations. And I've been learning about the systems of my body and my own rhythm in ways that I never have ever before. It has been a mind-blowing start of the year for me to dive into Ayurveda in this way with a trusted guide who really knows what's up. And it's been interesting in terms of my nutrition, in terms of my self-care, and I highly recommend if you are also looking to better understand your body, your systems, and also to understand a bit more about Ayurveda and how it can really help you. The wisdom behind it is fascinating. You can check out booking a consultation with her as well. I'm going to put that link in the show notes. And then my final announcement before we get into today's episode is that if you are a fellow yoga teacher who has said that this will be the year that you start to put all of your offers online and you start to really establish your online presence, I want to tell you about Offering Tree, because with Offering Tree, you can have an unlimited on-demand class and course library, which is unheard of. By the way, it also comes with a website and a bunch of other things, that other softwares that allow you to have an online library of courses and classes that you can share with your community do not have. So if you want to try this out, go to the link in the show notes or offeringtree.com/Shauna Crew. That's offeringtree.com/Shauna Crew. This is a great first step that you can take right now to start to get yourself truly organized online, so you can pause me if you need to while you go and take this first step to make this the year that your offers are available and organized in the online world. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. And if you were listening to this right now, I'd also love if you take a moment to drop me a rating for my podcast and make sure you're subscribed to the show so that I can continue to bring you such wonderful interviews like this one that we have with Rey today. With that said, sit back, relax, but also lean in. Today on the Leadership and Yoga podcast, Rey Cardenas. Rey, welcome back to the Leadership and Yoga podcast. It's so fun to see your face again. And if you're tuning in, you may practice with Rey. You may know who he is. If you don't know who he is, I actually have another interview where, we get a little bit even deeper into the background of how we met and everything like that. But basically, in short, Rey is somebody that I've brought my family to practice with. He's somebody I've brought traveling yoga teachers that are in town to practice with when I was living in Austin. And he's a phenomenal teacher. So today's podcast is really going to be what the heart of the Leadership and Yoga podcast is, which is talking to yoga teachers about teaching yoga. And specifically some themes like astrology and rhythm in our living and in our greater world. So, Ray, thanks for being here. It's an honor to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me back, Shauna. I had such a good experience on the first one, so happy to be here again. Thank you.
Wonderful. So, one of the things that really stands out to me about your class among so many different things, because I feel like, as you know, a way of background, I teach rocket yoga. If you're listening and you're not familiar, it's just a very different practice, I would say, than what I go and do with Ray. But that's why I love to take your class, is because I feel like I'm always looking for, okay, where are my areas of weakness? Where could I maybe expand the way that I'm doing things? And one of the things that really stands out to me about your class is the way that you weave in astrology. And you're talking about these greater themes and about seasons. And I just wanted to start off by asking you, have you always done that? Or is that something that came later on in your teaching?
It's definitely something that came later on. I used to, I think most people who coming up in the age that we're in which scientific materialism is the pinnacle, is like the governing standard. Astrology is written off as kooky. And I just know that it's still happening because my son just really dislikes it. And so, yeah, I was in that same boat. And it's funny because Rudolf Steiner, who I study a lot, um, he said that it isn't the scientific method that is the problem. The scientific method's really great, but there's a mode of consciousness that arises because the scientific method is so powerful and it's given us so much, where we're really hyper focused on the physical world that's right out in front of us that we can observe. And that, you know, astrology and some of the older wisdom traditions are outside the scope of that. But as a result of immersing ourselves in a kind of scientific materialistic worldview, it changes our consciousness to be cynical of anything that we can't quantify.
Okay.
And so I was not, so I was in that camp. And then before I found yoga, when I was, playing online poker every day for a living for like 5 years, I noticed that every day was the same, and it started to get really monotonous, a lot of burnout. And that can happen in any profession. That can happen in yoga teaching as well.
Yep.
And
It can.
so like as I was teaching yoga, yeah, I had that burnout. And I think we might have touched on this in the last conversation. I can't remember, but um, really what made me start doing it was I was studying Rudolf Steiner's cosmology, and in it, there are these different cultural ages. So he says, um, in our specific epoch, the very first age was the ancient Indian civilization, out of which the Vedas emerged, and eventually, yoga comes about. And like the original yoga was mantra yoga, chanting the Vedas under the guidance of the seven rishis, right? And so he says that's the first age, and it has certain characteristics that make it unique. And then there's another age, and these are all also delineated by certain periods of time, the different zodiacal ages. The next age is the ancient Persian civilization. So that's the second one. Then you have the ancient Egyptian, then you have the Greco-Latin, and then you have our age, which is like, the age of the West, Western civilization. And in his cosmology, he says you got to think about it kind of like a menorah, where also there's seven ages, you should know, according to this system that I'm referencing. But he says you think about it like the first age is connected to the seventh, the second to the
Ah,
sixth, and the third to the fifth. And so we're in the fifth age. The third age was the Egypto-Chaldean Babylonian civilizational age. And that is when astrology was guiding the formation of that civilization. And so Steiner says that actually what's happened is the external has become the internal. And so we've internalized the zodiac, but we don't even really know it. And but so I had this theory that I should, really see if what Steiner's saying about the connection between the third and the fifth age, like if I can, experience whether or not that's true by bringing it into my yoga class and orienting the practices in accordance with the attributes of whatever zodiacal period we're in. So, like, for example, right now, we're in Capricorn season, and there is a reason why I use the Western zodiac at a certain level. I see the validity in both the Vedic and the Western. It might take
Could
too
you
long.
briefly just
Sure.
share, yeah, a little bit about the difference between those two systems?
Sure. One is referencing the constellations, which are the stars themselves. And then one is referencing the signs, which have to do more with the relationship between the sun and the earth. And the Western zodiacal age, the tropical zodiac, which some people even call the inherent zodiac, one of the reasons why you know it's valid is that if you do a sophisticated natal chart reading with the Western zodiac, it resonates. Like if you're with someone that knows what they're doing, it's so you like, oh yeah, that's inherently true. I am like that. Um, and there's a really cool reason why that is. But um, so the signs established themselves in a particular age in which personality really comes onto the scene. And that's in the fourth cultural age, which is the Greek civilization, Roman civilization, that sort of thing. And that's in the age of Aries. And so that's why so basically we're getting out there right off the bat. But
We're here for it.
yeah, and all you have to do is look at certain things like when you look back at like when do the first personalities come onto the scene of history? When you think about like names that you recognize that aren't civilizational leaders or religious leaders, it comes about in ancient Greece with like Heraclitus and Socrates and things like that. This is because the I has entered into the human being, and a basically Earth experiences a big time transformation in this age, and we experience our divine individuality within. And so when you're working with personality, you work with the tropical zodiac. When you're working with like a deeper soul karma, you work with the Vedic, the constellations. So
So they're addressing different things.
yeah, different subtle bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
that's
it's
the
not
short
even really
answer.
relevant, the question of, or do they arrive to the same conclusion because they're not really looking at the same subtle body. So the Western is looking at the personality, and I would say the version that you would say is more tied to the Vedas is looking at karma and
Well,
perhaps like divine plan or something like that. Is that the right way? And
I
again,
would
if I say something, because I'm all I'm the first to say my knowledge in this area extends not past really the gene keys or a little bit of human design. So I don't dabble as much into these things.
yeah, no, I think that's a good way to put it, and it's a deep mystery, so it's worth pondering. You never want to like put a definitive answer on it, but we just gonna say, yeah, the Vedic astrology kind of relates more to um, the nature of your soul, which your spirit fashioned based on previous lives and your karma that you've accrued, and then the tropical zodiac pertains to your personality in this lifetime. Yeah.
So what do we do with this? I mean, how do we take something that's that vast and it is really that deep, even if we're just working with the Western version of astrology and take it into a yoga class. I mean, why? Why do that, I guess, is the question I will ask.
For me, it has to do with working against or balancing out mechanicality that this seeks to turn us into productivity machines that disconnects us from nature and from spirit. And so if I can bring a little something into my classes that lets people know, like, hey, during this time of year, like for example, right now in Capricorn season, right around like the Christmas holiday, it's a very liminal period. No matter what tradition you are aligned with, uh, it's a timeless space in which things kind of stand still. If you're really sensitive, you can kind of feel this spacious quality around the Christmas holiday. And it's literally like a society in America, kind of shuts down, where you stop going to work. Of course, we do all the cultural stuff like rush to get the gifts and all that. And that just kind of shows that like certain things are out of harmony with the nature of the season. But if you can connect with that, it has a healing effect. So like the relationship between the sun and the earth and all the planets, it supports certain things during different times of the year. And so this time of the year is really conducive to becoming something more than you think you are, like transcending your personal preferences and opening to kind of what you're evolving towards. That's a really good thing to do during Capricorn season. And there's stories from various traditions, but just the one that's coming to mind. And I know it's not every, like a lot of people come to yoga because they're turned off by Christianity, but esoteric Christianity, I think, ties in really well with even the Vedic spiritual tradition, and there's connections between it all. But there's the line of John the Baptist, who is known as the lonely goat in the wilderness, and that's Capricorn. He says, "I must increase so that he can decrease," and it's just like the smaller personality kind of takes a step back, opens up to something more, and invites that in. And you can find that in stories across various traditions, but that's just the one that's coming to mind for me right now.
So it's kind of understanding then what in different seasons is supported and then using that almost like to catapult you a little bit. So that way you're not swimming upstream trying to go in a particular direction when it may not be the incorrect direction, but it just might not be the right time for it. Trying to plant
Exactly.
in winter, right?
Yeah,
The ground is all
exactly.
frozen.
Exactly. And it's not something that like inhibits your freedom, but it's more of like, how can I speak this language? Like, how can I, harmonize with what's inherently happening? And so I just try to give a little taste of that in my classes, because I find that we're so disconnected from the seasonal rhythm that things start to get monotonous and people get burnt out. And really, um, it can be very humanizing to live artistically, live as though your life is a drama, not in the negative sense, but that it's a story unfolding, because it is. Um, so I try to just bring a little bit of that into um, a cultural paradigm that's gotten a little bit rigid or cold.
And the other thing too that really struck me when we were talking the other day, and it's top of mind because here I've got like sun in my eyes in Seattle. It's amazing, January sun. But we talk a lot about the sun actually in yoga, and a lot of in indirect ways. Sun salutations. I guess is pretty direct, but I want to hear from you because you spoke to the relationship of the sun and yoga, and I think that is a really clear tie for me because Yeah, I'm always looking for at the way that people weave something to be a cohesive experience because that's how your classes feel. It doesn't feel like, oh, yoga and some astrology thrown in. It's like, no, it's actually the combination of the two interwoven. And I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on the sort of way that the sun is inherently tied to yoga, actually, in the first place.
So the way that you can kind of blend, uh, unite, harmonize astrology and yoga is you can think about what happens when the sun and the earth are, let's say, uh, moving away from each other, like when the days are getting shorter, they're spending less time close together. Um, you could think about what happens when you move away from something.
Mm.
It's almost like it's in the eurythmy method. It's called the gesture of aversion, where you step your right foot forward, left foot back. And if you're listening now, you could do this if you're not driving or something like that. But you bend your elbows and you put your hands up like this, and you lean back, and you notice, where does the energy go when you do that? When you lean back, the energy from your center of gravity in your hips moves up into your head. And
Mm.
this is because when we're averse, this is why when we do backbends, we get pranavayu, udana the energy goes up. And so when the sun and earth are moving away from each other, it's that same quality. And so we kind of get up into our heads. And this starts to happen during fall, because the sun and the earth are spending less time close together. And
Hmm.
this is why in fall you can get really heady. And if you're overly heady in fall, like, oh my gosh, I need to do this. What's my life all about? I'm back from the sleep of spring and summer, in which, because when you do a forward bend, if you
Mm.
notice where your energy goes, it goes down into your legs, into your limbs, and your upper body, your head goes to sleep. And so we're in spring and summertime, we're kind of on autopilot, drifting and dreaming and living it up and enjoying. And then fall comes and we're hit. We're like, okay, back to the grind, back to reality. Oh, what's my
Back to
life all about?
school.
Yeah,
Yep.
back to school, exactly. And so you can just you can when you know that's what people are experiencing, whether they know it or not, then you can teach to that, and that will impact your students in a meaningful way. And I recommend not telling everyone the recipe right off the bat, because I have a tendency to do that, to say like, hey, here's what I'm doing. And then certain people who don't have an affinity for astrology are like, fuck this guy, I'm going to the Pilates class down the street. But so
Yeah.
yeah, so
You
so
gotta
it's like that.
sneak it past them sometimes. Let them
Exactly. You don't have to tell them.
have the experience first before the judgment.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm kind of working on, is just slowly walking people towards an understanding. Because if you hit them with too much too fast,
Yeah.
then it can turn them off.
It's interesting to me, this idea of not necessarily reinventing ourselves entirely as teachers, but that moment when you're going to try something new and you really want to start to work something new into your classes. How do you go about that? And is it like one day to the next, you just try something a little bit risky, see how it goes, evaluate? Because it's awkward. Sometimes when I try new things, I'm like, this feels like a second puberty. Like I feel weird. Like I feel like I'm out of my normal routine as a teacher. But at the same time, it's necessary.
Yeah, and then I think after you know being in yoga for a while, you see how things shift. And maybe I'm in a unique position as a studio owner, but for some reason I just felt like, um, I need to go against the grain. I think I've always had that in my personality, but I need to kind of try. It tied into just like this idea that I can't acquiesce to whatever is standardized and popular in the moment, just because that's going to get more people in the door. And I think in the long run, that's a good strategy because, like with anything else, the yoga pendulum like ebbs and flows. And so I just was thinking, like, I'm inspired by this and I'm going to try to sync it up. And I stumbled over it for a while, and it's getting clearer and clearer and um, resonating with people. And so my experiment to see, like, well, is there this link between, the astrologically oriented Egyptian culture and this culture right now? When you experience the planets as internalized, there definitely is. There's definitely people that are down. I was leading the 300-hour module a couple weeks ago, and I should have known this, but I'm just sensitive to people not being into astrology because I remember how I wasn't into it. But I just asked, I was like, show of hands, who really dislikes astrology? And everyone was like, come on, we all love it. We all love it. Like, what are you talking about? You're in teacher training. Like, so, but I know there
That's
are
funny.
folks that aren't into it. So
Yeah, yoga culture varies dramatically. You never know that you go to a new city, a new part of town, you have no idea what you can find and not find. But yeah, generally speaking, I feel like if we're taking the time to go into teacher training and having that open mind to go that direction with our lives, it's people are at least a little bit more aware of being open to that sort of stuff. And then ultimately, I find a lot of times what we have sort of an aversion to, we inevitably also end up attracting towards us in some way. So I feel like that's why we go through those swings. The gifts that are found in the shadows is a real thing. And it's interesting to me when you talk about, so being an owner of Practice Yoga Austin, which, by the way, if you're in Austin or ever in the area, you must go and practice. Absolutely. They do it. What's your guys' slogan? The insanely high quality donation based yoga. Did I just butcher it? Is that what it is?
absurdly, but
Okay, close.
insanely, that essentially the same idea.
Yeah. But you guys do, as you mentioned before, you offer this sort of seasonal instruction as part of what you guys are doing. I mean, it is a part of the experience at practice to help practitioners of the yoga live in rhythm. And I was curious if you could speak a little bit more about how that actually looks and how you've found that kind of, what does that mean? Is that individual? Is that more about the seasons? Is it about our personal cycles as individuals? Just because I know we've got lots of other studio owners that are curious about this sort of thing. We've got lots of other teachers who may want to start to teach as well with this sort of rhythm in mind. But yeah, talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, it's primarily done through the Ayurvedic lens, just because that's more typically associated with yoga, and it's super valid, and a lot of our teachers are certified yoga therapists, and Ayurveda is a part of that curriculum, and it's been scientifically proven that when you do Ayurvedic practices, it has a long-term healing effect, and it's just true that, like, you shouldn't necessarily practice yoga in the same way during the summertime as you do during the wintertime because of that just inherent difference in, not only like meteorologically, but just in the subtle energy as well that's cosmically oriented. So
Is there a sort of high level description of the difference between like a summer versus winter practice for somebody who's maybe new to their yoga practice? Like what is the main differences that maybe could be recommended as according to Ayurveda in that context?
So if there's an abundance of heat, it also, depends on where you're at. But if there's an abundance of heat outside, you don't necessarily need to cultivate so much heat within. And so this is why at practice, like when the days are longer, we add on during the summer an 8:45 p.m. yin class because cooling practices are help to balance the abundance of heat in the summer. And then in the wintertime, maybe not this winter because it's been pretty warm, at least down here in Austin, but um, you would incorporate some more rajasic practices that generate heat just to balance the cold that's out there, or the tamasic, heavy, inert quality in the environment. So that's just a real easy way to think about it.
Tamasic is a word that I think I said it correctly that I have been really interested in recently and recently learned about. But what is that exactly for folks who may not be familiar?
It's one of the three gunas. It's a quality of nature. It's inertness, it's heaviness, it's sluggishness, it's density. But if you as an individual have a tamasic disposition, that could be characterized as your body is has is overpowering your soul impulses. Yeah. So like if you feel ineffective, you can't do what you want to do. It's heavy, like you're tired. It's like that's a tamasic disposition. Now, if you have a rajasic disposition that's fiery, then your soul qualities are overpowering your body, and that might mean that you are overworking, that you're go go go, you can't rest. And so a lot of people strive for the sattvic disposition, in which the soul and body are in harmony with each other. And so that's kind of where the seasonal piece plays in.
It's so beautiful. I feel like both of those words, and I can picture specific moments in my life where it's just like an example of that kind of energy. And I think that this is really key when we're talking about these cycles and the idea of rhythm, because so often we want things to either be black or white. We want to go every single day to this kind of yoga that's going to change our life, and that's all we're going to do. Or we want to never miss a day of a particular kind of practice. And yet, it's a little bit harder because you have to trust yourself to step away from certain practices in different moments and trust yourself to return to them when it is right and not think that you're just going to fall off the wagon and never ever come back again, you know?
Totally. That's yeah. And I think about like you can apply these qualities of the gunas to different phases in life. So when you are in your late teens, early 20s, and even like into your early 30s, like that's typically a rajasic time of life in which you want to go, you want to level up, and so you're going to be drawn towards these heat generating practices, this discipline of doing a consistent thing over and over and over. And that's appropriate. And that's one of it ties into the wisdom of the body, because what's going to happen most likely is that your body is going to let you know when you need to slow down. And that's going to come with age. And I just know because that's what happened to me. And so yeah, it feels really bad at the time. Like, oh my gosh, I can't, do my handstand practice that I love every day. And you're bummed about it for a while, but then you take a step back, you progress in other areas, and then you can come back to the handstand practice, and maybe you don't hit it so fervently, but you've also like fortified yourself in all these other ways, hopefully, like
Yes.
philosophically, meditatively, that kind of thing.
It's super interesting because what you're describing, I've already experienced maybe 3 different times with different injuries that I've had. Some of them yoga related and some of them not. But each time, actually, one of those injuries led to the creation of this podcast. If I would not have been sort of forced in that moment to step away from the direction that I was going and wanting to be the world traveling yoga teacher and, wanting to do all of these things and to be the best in all of these asanas I was doing, I would never have sat down to do this. And so, yeah, it's so hard though in those moments when you're, especially as somebody who's used to just being so embodied and you're just used to doing all of these different things movement wise, to find other avenues like breath work, and then to return eventually to the movement with wisdom beyond anything that you could have ever had before. Certainly, it helps a lot with teaching as well.
Yeah. So that just sustainability, like just trust. I remember when I was younger, just noticing that there was an energy that was playing itself out through me, just that was happening to me, that was kind of more powerful than my conscious will. And so I was like, I can't not give myself over to this. And sometimes, it would lead me to learn a hard lesson, but um, I think that it needed to happen. Like it's part of my karmic path, and that it's actually an act of grace, and it kind of shows you what's not it, so that you can move towards um, maybe your purpose for incarnating in this lifetime.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit more about learning to actually live with that point of view? Because I think that's something that we can hear a lot spoken about, especially in the yoga world, of this idea of divine will and to trust and to really understand that, okay, well, I actually had to go through those things in order to shape this really important part of my character and to create this entire purpose that was going to play out in my life. It's like, wow, when you look at it retrospectively, it's incredible, but in the moment, it can just feel like shit. So, how do you, I guess, how have you stepped into that point of view of understanding, yeah, and feeling the grace of it all?
I would say that whenever you're experiencing something like I'm talking about, like a will impulse that um, you really can't resist, even though you think you might should. Uh, Also, these will happen less and less as you get older. So it's like inherent to a certain period of life, um, and it is your karma, like showing you what you need to learn. So if you can just take the principles that you apply to your asana practice, which is bring attention into every situation, you can sense like, oh, this is one of those things where um, I'm being basically compelled to do this. I think, and let's say it ends up like taking you to a place that is like a little bit painful, like you learn a hard lesson, you mess something up, and as a result of something that you did that wasn't fully conscious, you can, if you understand that there's an appropriate time of life for that to happen, which is generally like prior to age 35. I think I mentioned on the last podcast that my teacher said, like, you can be selfish before 35. You can, like, karmically, you can make a lot of mistakes because you're not fully into your body, soul, spirit yet.
Yeah.
So not beating yourself up over it as is crucial. And you just approaching it from that kind of non-dual perspective, which is like, hey, this is the thing. That's apparently bad, or it was apparently good at the time and it ended up being bad. And so it's actually both things. And then how can I evolve from that? And like just one quick example of that, and it sounds stupid now, but like in my early 20s, like I associated being able to have a, a drink with lunch or whenever I wanted to as freedom, as like a fu to anyone trying to tell me what to do. And I realized that was, you know, not really liberating, because I got, had a little alcoholism thing happen.
Yeah.
And then just being like, damn, I was stupid, but also, hey, I learned a lot from that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good example. What is at the time, right? What seems like good and liberation gives you liberation and power or whatever it is the mental story that you have around it. It just ends up not being true. What about if we we make mistakes after 35. What's our what's our saving grace?
Yeah, no, I mean, and of course we will. But I just let me think on that for a second. If you make mistakes after 35, then yeah, you just kind of I think you're more apt to forgive yourself. I know that I've made a lot of mistakes parenting wise and things like that. And here, I guess here's what is coming to mind is that like if you're practicing yoga and across a long period of time and you're doing it kind of in the holistic way, you are ascending. You're going on a path and you're leveling up. And one thing that you're going to notice on that path is that in order for you to do that, and this is kind of a harsh reality, but like if you live into your preferences, because yoga makes you more of who you are. So if you live into that and you're kind of making mistakes and that sort of thing, you're affecting other people's lives. In order for you to ascend, other people have to descend. This is like a harsh truth that was hard for me to wrap my head around. But it's an inherent aspect of reality. And
Yeah, is
so,
it like relative ascension versus because it's
yeah,
not necessarily that they're even going down, but compared to where you are going, they would be. Or is it like you're saying it's more of like a scale or
it's kind of like a cosmic law like as you evolve and progress, other beings have to kind of be at like set a foundation that supports you because we're
this
all
is feeling
connected.
like the Matrix when if when one guy gains a lot, I forget what his name is, but when he gains a lot of power and he's on the positive side, it's like his equal and opposite force in the negative sense appears in the
Yeah,
world.
because we are in that realm of polarity with this, physical and spirit. Yeah. So yes, and so when you realize that, what should accompany that is this strong sense of duty and to not be selfish and to like once you build up your being and you have certain psychological means and physical means that you use them to make payment for all the others who descended to help you ascend. And then you bring people up in that regard. So it's
Interesting.
yeah, so it's so if you definitely, if you are making mistakes and hopefully they're kind of small and understandable ones, but you just do your best and try to not have don't live selfishly is the short answer. The purpose of the spiritual path is to be in service to others, especially those that aren't as fortunate to you as you. Yeah. So
And I think speaking of the path of service and the path of teaching yoga, I want us to talk actually specifically about teaching yoga now here and what you have experienced, especially because you've been, 10 years leading teacher training. And yeah, I love to ask, in your opinion, what makes an exceptional yoga class?
loved seeing that clip of you and Jonah's conversation recently where he says that a great yoga class is really an experience. Um, and it reminded me of this idea of like what's called a Goethean conversation, which is where like when you are totally present with someone who's communicating something to you, like you're both parties are changed and this kind of new thing gets created. And so a yoga class is like that on steroids because there's a group of people, um, you know, we're being like as totally present with each other and creating something new from that. So it isn't this like student teacher paradigm where I'm going to tell you how to do something and you're going to do it. And, you're going to be subservient to me or something because I'm the teacher and you're the student. But yeah, if you approach things from the perspective of I'm going to be totally present with y'all are totally present with me, and we are going to co-create an energy that we all can feed off of that takes us, out of this room and out into the world that we also then give to other people and make things better. So that is part of that kind of responsibility of the initiate or the yogi or the spiritual seeker, is to kind of amplify that goodness through shared presence and make your classes be in service to that. And that does come with the make it an experience. Yeah, and it can look a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, I absolutely adore that when you said this, that the teacher, as a teacher, we're being incredibly present. And as a student, you're being incredibly present. And really that's an equal in that sense. It's just a presence. It's not about one person, up on the podium pointing down and instructing in that sense.
Yeah.
I like that.
We're giving each other a gift of
Each
attention.
mutual
Yeah.
gift of attention. And the most valuable thing we have,
Mm-hmm.
truthfully, attention and our time.
Yep, exactly.
What about in the actual, getting even more into the tangible aspects of the class, like instruction and how we're actually speaking when we teach?
Yeah, so something that's really been inspiring me lately is this way of cueing that takes you out of yourself. And this is a stage. Everything comes in stages. Like if you're a newer teacher, most of your mental energy is going to be focused on what you're saying, right? But in a yoga class, you're saying a lot of the same things over and over. So that starts to become second nature. And when that does happen, this is where this next step comes in. And it involves centering yourself outside of your body, in the space that you're in the room with the people or whatever, and hearing the words that are coming out of your mouth in real time and being receptive to your energy when you're speaking and adjusting it in real time based on what's happening. It's a really good way to feel the energy of the whole situation, as opposed to yoking what you're saying to how you're feeling about the situation. Anchor your attention outside of yourself, because when you hear something, really it's more than hearing. There's a feeling quality that is directly bound up with hearing, and that's why kids orient their identities around music, because they hear it and it makes them feel a certain way. And so you can apply that to this situation by anchoring your attention outside of yourself.
Can you give us like a visual breakdown of how this, just to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly? Like you're standing in class, you're cueing a downward facing dog, but like what's going on? What's the actual mental process? If I can poke for details
yeah.
on it.
Well, so I'll tell you like a meditation practice that you can do to make it more tangible. So you can sit and close your eyes and put your attention at the center of your head. And it's like, when you're like, what do yoga poses do? They create a sensation that makes us easier to like put our attention there and see what's going on, right? And so as yogis, we know that, okay, I can put my attention at the center of my head and I'm going to feel certain things. I'm going to feel like a density or a pressure or something that lets me know like, hey, my attention is there in my head. And then you can associate a visual with it. So visualize a little ball of light in the center of your head. And then you can move that ball of light kind of out your frontal third eye, and you can put it out in front of you and above you. And you can have your attention outside of your body. And then you can imagine like this little ball of light, you could have it turn back and look down upon you or shine upon you. And you can kind of feel this out of body, and it almost feels like this higher aspect of yourself. It's a really great meditation to do. And there's something about that placement of sending it kind of in front of you and above you, like a 45-degree line coming out from your third eye, and then have it shine down upon you. And it's like, whoa, I'm being like, attended to by this, higher self, this pure attention that is actually like a part of me. So if you do that, it can become really tangible to then do that and then just shine it on the whole class and you, and shine it on the entire situation. And that's kind of what you're doing. And then you bring in the sound component. You're like, okay, my voice is hitting like this. Maybe I need to bring in a little bit more depth. No, I don't.
No, I mean, I try to watch at least one of my classes back once, ideally every couple months, but once per year, which usually happens only when we record something and then you watch it back, and it's very enlightening to listen to it. So I almost feel like that meditation while listening to it could be like a step before, trying to actually do that during class. Fascinating,
Totally.
fascinating things.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that makes me think about when I listened to our podcast conversation, because I don't listen to myself speak that often. Maybe I do because I do make some videos, but um, it's surprising to hear like, oh, I said this too much, or that
Different
kind of thing.
formats. Yeah, different formats. That's one of the coolest things about having over 200 episodes and only recently having help to edit them is that I have really listened to myself. And it's funny because things, once you remove one little tweak that you want to do and you realize you have one particular habit, another one pops up. It's like weeds out of a garden. It's just, yeah, it's somewhat never ending, but it's good to be aware of at least.
Totally.
Yeah.
Another really helpful tool for speech formation, and this is a form of mantra yoga, but there's a meaning inherent in um, every single sound. And I
Yes.
don't, did we talk about this last time about like the H and the S?
I don't think the specifics of it.
Okay, but so check this out. We'll do it quickly, but so like if you make the sound s, the S sound, it look at the feel the part of your tongue that has to move. It's out at the tip of your tongue. It's out at the outer
Uh-huh.
part of your verbal apparatus. And so if you make the sound huh, that comes from deep within.
Yes.
And so that's kind of like from the inner world, and the is the outer world. And so the outer world is more material, physical, and is the sound that the snake makes, the most earthbound animal. So it's a very kind of like materialistic, it has to do with the physical world kind of sound. And is a very spiritual sound coming from the center. And there's like little stories like that with every single consonant and vowel sound. And if you study those, which you could, find out more information on that through eurythmy, which is Rudolf Steiner's movement method, in which not only, are you tapping into the meaning inherent in sound, but you're doing bodily postures that reflect that meaning, then you can get you can start to really tap into what you're saying and aligning it with seasonal energy and things like that. And this is something that I'm still working on. There's like,
Yeah, there's
yeah,
so
it's
much
very
there.
complex. Yeah. But it's
Hmm.
fun. It's exciting.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny how it makes your mind just think differently. I mean, even thinking about my name because Shauna starts with S and then H
Yeah.
right off the bat.
Yeah.
It's
That's a
it's the
harmony.
the two together. Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
And that's,
Um,
oh gosh, yeah, we could go into a rabbit hole, but we probably don't have time.
well, but if there's one more thing, let's hear it. Let's hear it. We're here.
Oh, I was just thinking about, um, that there's different, like when you're, and it's more about like poetry, but it could, when you're teaching yoga, it's kind of poetic, but when you use certain sounds like sha and ja, those softer blended sounds, those lend themselves, they have like epic qualities, like these, like like the Iliad and just these epic journeys. For some reason, those sounds evoke kind of an epic quality, whereas other sounds like um, ba and pa, that's more like lyrical poetry, kind of. So just different types of poetry, different ways of speaking that evoke different moods in people that they don't even know what's happening to
They
them.
don't even realize.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this has been a big fascination of mine with the yoga class too, is because at first, you're trying to just speak. Then you're trying to speak and be yourself, whatever that means at that particular moment. And then you're like, well, how is this landing for people? What is the mood of the class? Like, do I want to be energizing to people? Do I want to be bringing them more towards like a trance feeling? Do I want it to be epic, or do I want it to be more just casual so people feel comfortable? And that is where the infinite fine tuning for me comes in with teaching yoga. Absolutely.
And it ties into the roots of yoga because, like I mentioned earlier, the very really first yoga was mantra yoga, in which, people chanted Sanskrit. And what do we mean when we say Sanskrit's a tonal language? It means that the way that consciousness was oriented back in the day was such that when people spoke or sang certain sounds, they had a direct experience of the meaning in those sounds. And so those words are more closely connected to the meaning in the sounds themselves than, say, English is, even though they're in the same language family. They're in the Germanic language family. But yeah, so it's interesting. And like if you want people to feel like more held in your yoga class, then you would use like ba sounds, like a boundary or an abode. And Rudolf Steiner says that the sound ba is associated with the constellation of Virgo, which is like the womb, the protective feminine, So it's like cool stories behind all the sounds that can, yeah, inspire you to really focus on how you're speaking to others.
It's super inspiring, and it's good to have that fire to continue. And those are things that you can do in research, as a yoga teacher anytime, and you could go very far in it. And I wanted to ask you one other thing, because I think it's really fascinating, the fact that you're doing the yoga, the teacher trainings, but you guys also have a yoga therapy program. And I know that there are thousands and thousands of yoga teacher training programs, and there's only about 50 yoga therapy schools. So you guys have one of them. And yeah, what is it exactly about yoga therapy? What is it that you guys are offering that's different, I guess, than what folks might expect from a general yoga teacher training program?
It's essentially grad school for yoga. It's a 3-year program and it's very academic. And I'm in our program right now. We've been offering the program for 6 years. I'm in the fifth cohort. I think we're going into our 7th year. So I'm going into my 3rd and final year as a student in the program. And it's been challenging for me because it is very much oriented towards getting yoga integrated into the medical mainstream. And so in order to do that, you have to really embrace scientific research, which I know it's valuable, but I like to, I tend towards, the things like the ancient wisdom, but it's wonderful. And this is actually something that Rudolf Steiner says that we need to do, is that we need to take the scientific method and we need to apply it to, spiritual things. And so and Steiner doesn't have anything to do with yoga therapy. He's just, my guy. But yoga therapy is very scientifically oriented. And so you like at the end of this program, you do a research study on some, therapeutic yoga practice, and you compile evidence-based research in service of raising the profile of yoga therapy through the scientific method, because that is, I hate to say it, but that's like the religion for a lot of people today. So so it's an academic program. It's really awesome. It abides from the kosha system. So you don't just treat the anamaya kosha, you don't just treat the physical body, but you address imbalances in the pranamaya kosha, manomaya, vijnanamaya, and anandamaya. So energy body, lower mind, higher mind, core of bliss. There's practices to bring equilibrium into every aspect of an individual. And it's cool because the United States military is hiring yoga therapists to work with people with PTSD. So it really is being integrated. Like the Mayo Clinic is hiring yoga therapists. So it's all happening. You can get jobs in the hospitals and rehab clinics and have a private practice. And
So wonderful.
yeah, so still an emerging field, but it's on its way.
And those cohorts, you guys do them every year or quarterly?
Yep, we do them every year. The next one starts in April, and it's available on Zoom. So you can do the training from anywhere. We've had people participate from France and Ireland and Pittsburgh and California and so check it out. Practice School of Yoga Therapy.
Yeah, I'll definitely link that in the show notes. I think that's really neat, and I love that option of grad school for for yoga teachers because I feel like coming from, I did my bachelor and I've always been like, oh, I would love to go back to school and get a master's, but now it just feels like so not quite aligned to go back into the traditional master's program, but this sounds really neat. So I'll link that for sure.
Yeah, it's also way cheaper than
That's, you know what, that's promising as well.
yeah.
It's really promising. Well, there's so much, Ray, that I always feel like we could keep talking about, but I'm gonna wrap us up and bring us to the final question of the interview, which is always the same final question. And every time you're on the podcast, you get a new Billboard message. And so if you are tuning into the podcast for the first time today, you're not familiar with it, the idea is that if you had a billboard that was going to be seen by everybody in the world, so kind of speaking to ultimate platform, what would you use your ultimate platform for? What would you put on your billboard? It could be a message that you live by. It could just be a quote or a word that's top of mind. It doesn't even have to be words if you don't want it to be. But Ray, what would you put on your billboard?
I'm trying to remember what I said last time because I don't want to say the same thing because it's something's coming to mind, and I hope it's not the same thing I said last time.
That's all right. If it's so nice, you can say it twice.
Yeah, exactly. Romanticize your life. And that's a quote from, I believe that's Goethe, who was a German romantic, but it's just the idea of, romanticize your life. Don't become a machine.
Please do not need more machine. We need more humans romanticizing their life. How beautiful. Let folks know where they can find you, also where they can come practice with you. And I know that we've just spoken to the yoga therapy as well, but anything else you want to share on where people can continue to learn from you?
Practice Yoga Austin on East 6th Street, 78702. It's a donation-based yoga studio. We've been around 12 years. It's an awesome place. And you can find me on IG at Raise Awareness. And then I also started a YouTube channel where I'm talking about some of the more esoteric topics long form. So there's yoga sprinkled in, but it's a lot of anthroposophy, which is Rudolf Steiner's thing. Um, and it's just my name, Rey Cardenas.
Awesome. I'll be sure to link all that in the show notes as well. And thank you for your time. If you're listening as well, thanks for making it all the way to the end of the episode. And hopefully we'll practice live in person again very, very soon.
Let's do it. Thanks for having me.